The journey back in time, ancient Greece and the Greek gods. Mythology, the birth of the gods. Imagine the world before time, before the rise of man, before the whisper of history. A vast emptiness stretches endlessly, silent and eternal. The Greeks called it chaos, a void without shape, without form, without purpose. And from this emptiness, life began to stir. The first beings were not gods as we imagine them, but primal forces. Mysteries so ancient, so vast, that even the Olympians would one day bow to the weight of their memory. There was Gaia, the earth herself, the eternal mother. She gave form to land, mountains, valleys, and the deep womb of the world. There was Nyx, the night, whose darkness could terrify even Zeus in ages yet to come. And there was Erebus, the deep shadow, and Tartarus, the abyss beneath all things. The Greeks saw creation not as a gentle birth, but as a violent collision of forces, the eternal struggle between chaos and order, darkness and light, eternity and mortality. The first betrayal. From Gaia, the earth, came Uranus, the sky. He spread himself across her, a vast canopy of stars, and together they bore the Titans, the first generation of mighty beings. They gave birth to Oceanus, Hyperion, Themis, Rhea, Mnemosyne, and many others, but Uranus was cruel. He despised some of his children, especially the monstrous Cyclopes and the 100-handed giants, and cast them deep into the abyss of Tartarus. Gaia, the mother of all, wept for her imprisoned children. And so, the first betrayal was born. She turned to her Titan sons, asking who among them was brave enough to strike against their father. Fear gripped them all, except for one. Cronus. Cronus, the youngest and most ambitious Titan, agreed. Gaia gave him a sickle of unbreakable adamantine. One night, as Uranus descended upon Gaia, Cronus leapt from the shadows and struck. With one swing, he severed his father's power forever. From the blood of Uranus spilled upon the earth came creatures both beautiful and terrifying, the Furies, spirits of vengeance, and the giants. And from the sea foam, where his severed flesh fell, rose the goddess Aphrodite, radiant and eternal. The age of the Titans had begun. The prophecy. Cronus became ruler of the cosmos, his Titan brothers and sisters ruling at his side. For a time, there was balance. But power is never safe, not even for the mighty. A prophecy came forth, that Cronus, just like his father, would one day be overthrown by his own children. Fear consumed him, and fear, as it always does, drove him to cruelty. When his wife, the Titaness Rhea, bore their children, Cronus swallowed them whole. One by one, his children disappeared into his stomach. First Hestia, then Hera, then Demeter, Poseidon, and Hades. But when the sixth child was born, Rhea could bear it no longer. She sought counsel with Gaia, her mother, and together they devised a plan. Rhea gave birth to her son in secret on the island of Crete. She swaddled a stone in cloth and presented it to Cronus, who swallowed it greedily, believing he had destroyed his final threat. But the child, Zeus, was hidden away in a cave, nursed by the divine goat Amalthea and protected by warriors who clashed their shields to drown out his cries. The world did not yet know it, but the true king of the gods had been born, the rise of Zeus. Years passed, and Zeus grew strong. He was not only powerful but cunning, a master of strategy as well as strength. He returned to his mother, Rhea, and together they prepared to confront Cronus. With the help of the goddess Metis, Zeus tricked Cronus into drinking a potion that forced him to vomit up his children. One by one, they returned. Hestia, Hera, Demeter, Poseidon, and Hades, reborn into the world, furious and ready for war. The Titanomachy, the greatest war in myth, had begun. The Titanomachy. The Titans stood with Cronus, their leader. Towering and ancient, their power shook the cosmos. The Olympians, young and fiery, stood against them. The battle raged for 10 long years with the heavens themselves trembling. Mountains were hurled like stones, oceans boiled, the very earth cracked open with fire. The Titans had strength, but Zeus had cunning. He freed the Cyclopes and the 100-handed giants from Tartarus, the very children his grandfather Uranus had despised. Grateful, they gave Zeus gifts that would define him forever: the thunderbolt to Zeus, the trident to Poseidon, and the helmet of invisibility to Hades. Armed with divine weapons, the Olympians struck. Zeus hurled lightning that shattered mountains. Poseidon's trident split the seas. Hades cloaked himself in shadows, unseen, striking terror into the Titans' hearts. At last, Cronus and his allies were defeated. The Titans were chained and cast deep into Tartarus, guarded by the 100-handed giants. And thus began the reign of the Olympian gods, the meaning behind the myth. But what did these stories mean to the ancient Greeks? The cycle of Uranus, Cronus, and Zeus was more than myth. It was a reflection of human history. Fathers fearing sons, kings fearing rivals, the eternal cycle of power where every ruler must eventually fall. It also spoke of the human condition itself. Chaos becomes order, order becomes tyranny, tyranny collapses into rebellion, and rebellion gives birth to a new age. This wasn't just mythology, it was philosophy hidden in story. And so, with the fall of the Titans, the world entered a new era. An era ruled not by monsters, but by gods who looked very much like us, flawed, passionate, jealous, and ambitious. The age of the Olympians had begun. But who were these gods? Why did men and women offer them temples, sacrifices, and prayers? And why do their stories still resonate thousands of years later? We ascend to the heights of Mount Olympus and meet the gods who shape the destiny of mortals and immortals alike. The journey back in time. Ancient Greece and the Greek gods. Mythology. Part 2. The gods of Olympus. The thunder of war had faded. The Titans were chained deep in the abyss, their voices echoing faintly in Tartarus, and the cosmos fell silent. And in that silence, a new world was born. On the highest peaks of the earth, above the clouds, the victors of the Titanomachy built their home, a palace of brilliance, beauty, and power. This was Mount Olympus, but Olympus was not merely a mountain. It was the very heart of divine order, the place where gods feasted, quarreled, loved, and punished, looking down on mortals with eyes both merciful and merciless. And at the throne of Olympus sat one figure above them all, Zeus, king of the gods. Zeus, the ruler of the sky. Zeus was the stormbringer, lord of thunder, wielder of the lightning bolt forged by the Cyclops. His voice was the crash of storms, his will the shifting of fate itself. But though he was king, Zeus was not flawless. He was ambitious, cunning, and endlessly hungry for power. He ruled with authority, yes, but also with insecurity, forever fearing the prophecy that his rule, too, would one day end as Cronus's did. And then there were his desires. Zeus's passions were as uncontrollable as the storms he commanded. From mortal women to immortal goddesses, his countless affairs created demigods, heroes, and bitter rivalries that shaped myths for centuries. His love was intoxicating, but his betrayal was legendary. And through it all, he embodied one truth: power always comes at a price. Hera, the queen of Olympus. Beside Zeus sat Hera, goddess of marriage and queen of the gods. Radiant and majestic, Hera represented loyalty, tradition, and the sacred bond of union. But betrayal carved her heart into stone. For every affair Zeus pursued, Hera unleashed wrath upon his lovers and their children. It was not Zeus she punished, rarely did she dare, but the innocents caught in his desire. Hera's story was the story of jealousy sharpened into vengeance. Yet she was not only the goddess of scorn, she was protector of women, patron of queens, and the force that demanded respect in a world ruled by men. Hera reminded the Greeks of a simple truth: even the most sacred bonds can fracture under the weight of betrayal. Poseidon, lord of the sea. If Zeus ruled the sky, then his brother Poseidon ruled the vast oceans. His trident split mountains, his storms sank fleets, his waves shaped the coasts of nations. But Poseidon was as unpredictable as the sea itself. At times generous, offering safe passage and bounty from the waters, at times furious, unleashing earthquakes and floods to destroy those who defied him. He was both creator and destroyer, the eternal reminder that nature cannot be controlled, only respected. To sailors, he was both a god of salvation and a god of terror. For in every voyage there lingered the same prayer: may Poseidon be with us. Hades, the shadow below. And then there was Hades, ruler of the underworld. But unlike the Christian devil he would later be confused with, Hades was not evil. He was inevitable, silent, stern, and just. Hades was the god of death, of shadows, of the unseen. Mortals feared him, but they also respected him, for no man could escape his realm. Kings, warriors, peasants, all met Hades in the end. His kingdom was not one of fire, but of balance. Tartarus for the wicked, the Elysian fields for the righteous, and the asphodel meadows for ordinary souls. Hades was not cruelty, he was truth, and perhaps that made him the most terrifying god of all. Athena, the goddess of wisdom. From the head of Zeus, in a flash of agony, came forth Athena, fully armed, radiant in armor, goddess of wisdom, strategy, and civilization. Unlike Ares, who reveled in bloodshed, Athena represented war as intellect, tactics, justice, and order. She was the goddess who guided kings, who inspired philosophers, who became the protector of Athens itself. But Athena was not soft. She was sharp, calculating, sometimes merciless. Her wisdom was not kindness. It was clarity. She embodied the truth that true power is not brute force, but the mastery of mind over chaos. Apollo and Artemis, the divine twins. From the union of Zeus and Leto came Apollo and Artemis, twins of light and shadow. Apollo, god of the sun, music, and prophecy, was beauty itself. His lyre sang songs that calmed storms. His chariot carried the sun across the sky, and his oracle at Delphi spoke truths that shaped nations. Yet, Apollo was not only light, he was also wrath. Insults to him brought plagues, and arrogance before him brought ruin. Artemis, goddess of the hunt and the moon, was his mirror in shadow. Virgin, untamed, protector of animals and women, she roamed forests with bow in hand. But cross her once, and death came swift and merciless. Together, they symbolized balance, light and dark, sun and moon, civilization and wilderness. Ares, the god of war. Then there was Ares, blood-drenched and chaotic. Where Athena represented strategy, Ares was the fury of battle itself. The scream of warriors, the clash of steel, the stench of death. The Greeks both despised and feared him. Even his fellow gods loathed his recklessness. Yet they knew he was necessary, for without destruction, there could be no renewal. Ares was humanity's shadow, the violence we deny, yet cannot escape. Aphrodite, the goddess of desire. Born from sea foam, Aphrodite was the goddess of beauty, love, and irresistible desire. Her presence could soften the hardest heart, ignite passion, and bring even gods to their knees. But love, in the Greek world, was never innocent. It was power. It was obsession, betrayal, manipulation. Aphrodite was not just beauty, she was the danger of beauty, for in her gaze, kingdoms could rise and fall. Hermes, the trickster. Swift-footed Hermes, messenger of the gods, was the patron of travelers, thieves, merchants, and liars. Mischievous, clever, impossible to contain. Hermes was the god who crossed boundaries. Between gods and men, life and death, truth and deception. He was the reminder that not all power comes from strength. Sometimes the sharpest weapon is wit. Hephaestus, the forge master. From fire and ash came Hephaestus, the crippled god of the forge. Cast out by Hera for his deformity, he became the divine blacksmith, crafting weapons, palaces, and wonders that shaped Olympus itself. Scorned by the gods, yet indispensable, Hephaestus symbolized the power of creation born from suffering. He was proof that even in weakness, there is strength. Dionysus, the god of ecstasy. And finally, Dionysus, god of wine, madness, and ecstasy. To his followers, he was freedom incarnate, the god who broke chains of order and unleashed the primal chaos of joy. But to others, he was danger itself, the loss of reason, the descent into frenzy. Dionysus embodied a truth the Greeks knew well, that too much order strangles the soul, and sometimes madness is necessary for renewal. The hidden meaning of Olympus. The gods of Olympus were not perfect. They were jealous, lustful, vengeful, and proud. But that was the point. They were humanity itself, magnified into immortality. Every passion, every flaw, every virtue, every sin. The Greeks saw them reflected in their gods. The Olympians were not far away. They lived inside every man and woman. And so, when the Greeks prayed, when they sacrificed, when they built temples of marble and gold, they were not worshiping perfection. They were worshiping themselves. But gods cannot exist without stories. And the true legends of Greece were not told only in Olympus, but in the blood, sweat, and tears of mortals. For it was in the heroes, the sons of gods and men, that myth became immortal. In the next part of the journey, back in time, we descend from Olympus and walk beside Heracles, Perseus, Theseus, and Achilles, the heroes who dared to defy destiny itself. The journey back in time. Ancient Greece and the Greek gods. Mythology. Part 3. Heroes and Legends. The gods of Olympus ruled from above. But their power did not end with thunderbolts and storms. It reached down into the veins of men, creating beings who stood between divinity and mortality. The Greeks called them heroes. And though their stories were told as myth, their struggles were painfully human. Betrayal, pride, fear, love, and the eternal question: can one mortal defy fate? Let us walk beside them now, into a world of monsters, trials, and impossible choices. Heracles, the weight of strength. The most famous of all was Heracles, known to the Romans as Hercules. Born of Zeus and the mortal Alcmene, Heracles was gifted with strength beyond any man, but that gift came with a curse. Hera, burning with jealousy at Zeus's infidelity, despised the child. From his birth, she sent serpents to kill him in his cradle. But even as an infant, Heracles crushed them in his tiny fist. Strength was his blessing, and his torment. As a man, Hera struck him with madness, and in his frenzy, he killed the very family he loved. Broken by guilt, he sought redemption. The oracle at Delphi gave him a sentence: to serve King Eurystheus and complete 12 labors, tasks so impossible they were meant to destroy him. He slew the Nemean lion, its hide impenetrable, strangled with his own hands. He cut off the heads of the Lernaean hydra, a serpent whose heads grew back twofold. He captured the Ceryneian hind, swifter than arrows. He cleaned the Augean stables in a single day, not with hands but by diverting rivers. He descended into the underworld and brought forth Cerberus, the three-headed hound of Hades. Each labor was more than a feat. It was a symbol. The lion, the hydra, the stables, the underworld. They weren't just monsters, but reflections of human struggle, fear, chaos, filth, and death itself. And Heracles conquered them all, but his triumphs were not without tragedy. His strength could not save him from betrayal, nor from the pain of mortality. In the end, poisoned by a cloak of deceit, Heracles built his own funeral pyre and burned upon it. Yet in his death, Zeus raised him to Olympus, granting him immortality. Heracles showed the Greeks one truth: strength alone cannot save you, but through suffering, redemption is born. Perseus, the slayer of Medusa. Then came Perseus, born of Zeus and Danae. His mother was locked away by her father, fearing prophecy, but Zeus descended in a shower of golden light, and Perseus was conceived. When he grew, King Polydectes sought to be rid of him, sending Perseus on a deadly quest to bring back the head of Medusa, one of the three Gorgons. Medusa's face was death itself. One glance and flesh turned to stone. But Perseus was not without help. Athena gave him a shield polished like a mirror. Hermes gave him winged sandals. Hades lent his helmet of invisibility. Armed with divine gifts, Perseus set forth. He entered the cavern of the Gorgons, where serpents hissed from their hair. Moving backward, watching only the reflection in his shield, Perseus struck, severing Medusa's head. From her blood sprang Pegasus, the winged horse. Perseus returned victorious, turning his enemies to stone with Medusa's head. Yet his greatest act came later, when he rescued Andromeda, chained to a rock as sacrifice to a sea monster. With courage and cunning, he saved her and made her his queen. Perseus' story was not just of bravery, it was about facing fear itself. The Greeks knew that Medusa represented the terror that paralyzes, the monsters of the mind. Perseus taught them, Victory comes not from avoiding fear, but by facing it directly. Theseus, the labyrinth of the mind. Another name carved into eternity was Theseus. Athens was plagued by the demand of King Minos of Crete. Every 9 years, 7 boys and 7 girls were sent into the labyrinth to be devoured by the monstrous Minotaur, half man, half bull. Theseus, son of King Aegeus, volunteered. Armed with courage alone, he sailed to Crete. There, Princess Ariadne fell in love with him, giving him a simple tool, a ball of string. In the twisting maze of the labyrinth, darkness pressing from every wall, Theseus tied the string to the entrance, unwinding it as he went deeper. At last, he faced the Minotaur, a beast of savagery and despair. With raw strength, he slew it and retraced his steps back to freedom. The Minotaur was more than a monster. It was the embodiment of human fear, rage, and the beast within us all. The labyrinth was life itself, confusing, endless, deceptive. Theseus taught the Greeks that courage, aided by intellect, can guide us out of even the darkest maze. Achilles, rage and destiny. And then, the greatest warrior of the Trojan War, Achilles. Born of the sea goddess Thetis and the mortal Peleus, Achilles was dipped as a child in the river Styx, his body invulnerable, except for his heel. When war broke out over Helen of Troy, Achilles became Greece's deadliest champion. His wrath was unmatched. When insulted by his king, Agamemnon, he refused to fight, and the war nearly crumbled without him. But when his beloved friend Patroclus was slain by Hector, prince of Troy, Achilles returned to battle. His rage burned like fire, and he slew Hector in single combat, dragging his body around the walls of Troy, and yet fate was inescapable. From the shadows, Paris fired an arrow, guided by Apollo, that struck Achilles in his only weakness, his heel. And so the greatest warrior fell, not by strength, but by destiny. Achilles' story reminded the Greeks that no man, no matter how strong, escapes mortality. The higher we rise, the swifter fate strikes us down. Odysseus, the eternal journey, and finally, Odysseus, king of Ithaca. Unlike Achilles or Heracles, Odysseus' weapon was not strength, it was intellect. After the fall of Troy, Odysseus began his long journey home, a voyage that would take 10 years. He faced the Cyclops Polyphemus, outwitted with the name Nobody. He resisted the song of the sirens, bound to his mast. He braved Scylla and Charybdis, monsters of sea and whirlpool. He even descended into the underworld itself, seeking guidance. But his greatest struggle was not with monsters. It was with himself. Temptation, pride, arrogance, despair. Again and again, he faltered. Again and again, he rose. At last, he returned to Ithaca, disguised as a beggar, and reclaimed his throne. Odysseus' story was the story of humanity itself. The endless journey, the trials that shape us, the longing for home. The hidden meaning of heroes. Why did the Greeks tell these stories? Because the heroes were not perfect. They were broken, flawed, human. Heracles showed the struggle for redemption. Perseus revealed the courage to face fear. Theseus taught the power of intellect. Jason warned of ambition's cost. Achilles embodied rage and mortality. Odysseus showed the long, painful journey of the soul. Heroes were not gods, they were us. And in their stories, the Greeks found guidance. Reminders of courage, warnings of pride, lessons of fate. But if the gods ruled the skies and heroes walked the earth, there was another stage where myths played out, the realm of love, lust, and vengeance. For the Greeks knew well, passion could destroy nations. In the next part of the journey, back in time, we witness the tangled loves of Zeus, the jealous wrath of Hera, and the judgment of Paris, the divine dramas that ignited the greatest war of the ancient world. The journey back in time. Ancient Greece and the Greek gods. Mythology. Part 4. Love, lust, and vengeance of the gods. If war built Olympus, then love and lust set it aflame. For the Greek gods were not distant forces of cold perfection. They were beings of passion, envy, and desire. And no one embodied this chaos more than Zeus. Zeus, the endless desire. The king of the gods was many things. Powerful, cunning, feared. But he was also consumed by desire. Again and again, he descended from Olympus, not as a god of wisdom or law, but as a lover, relentless and unstoppable. He came to Europa as a bull of dazzling white, carrying her across the sea to Crete, where she bore him sons. One of them, Minos, would rule Crete itself. He approached Leda as a swan, sweeping her into his wings. From that union came Helen of Troy, whose beauty would one day ignite the greatest war in history. He pursued Io, disguising her as a cow to hide her from Hera's wrath, though she would wander the earth tormented by Hera's jealous fury. To Semele, a mortal princess, he came in his full divine form, his brilliance so overwhelming that she perished in flames, leaving behind her child, Dionysus, born from Zeus's own thigh. Every conquest left behind ripples, new heroes, new gods, and new tragedies. For Zeus's love was never pure. It was obsession, power, and chaos disguised as passion. Hera, the wrath of a queen. And in the shadow of Zeus's desires stood Hera, his queen. Majestic and fierce, she was goddess of marriage, but her divine throne was forged in betrayal. Zeus rarely felt the consequences of his lust, but Hera made certain his lovers did. She struck Io, driving her across the earth in torment, stung relentlessly by a gadfly. She cursed Semele, ensuring her death before she could hold her child. She hunted Heracles, Zeus's son, from birth to death, sending madness, monsters, and betrayal at every turn. Her vengeance was merciless, her jealousy eternal. But beneath her cruelty was truth. Hera was the embodiment of scorned love, of loyalty betrayed, of the rage born when sacred bonds are shattered. She was not merely a goddess, she was every broken vow, every scar of betrayal given immortal form. Athena and Poseidon, the rivalry for Athens. Not all divine conflicts were born of lust. Some were born of ambition. The city of Athens, destined to be the heart of philosophy and democracy, once stood at a crossroads. Its people prayed for a patron god, a divine protector. Two gods answered. Poseidon, lord of the sea, struck the ground with his trident, and from it sprang a mighty horse, symbol of power, war, and conquest. Athena, goddess of wisdom, touched the soil, and from it grew the olive tree, a gift of peace, prosperity, and endurance. The people chose Athena, crowning her patron of Athens. Poseidon raged, flooding the plains, but the decision stood. This myth was more than rivalry. It was philosophy. Athens chose wisdom over war, prosperity over conquest, and that choice defined their legacy for centuries. The judgment of Paris, desire that burned the world, but nowhere did love and vengeance intertwine more powerfully than in the story that sparked the Trojan War. It began with a wedding, the marriage of Peleus and Theseus, parents of Achilles. All the gods were invited, except one, Eris, goddess of discord. Angered, Eris threw a golden apple into the feast, inscribed with 3 words, "To the fairest." 3 goddesses claimed it: Hera, queen of the gods; Athena, goddess of wisdom; Aphrodite, goddess of beauty. To settle the dispute, they turned to a mortal, Paris, prince of Troy. Each goddess offered him a gift. Hera promised him kingship over all the earth. Athena promised victory in every battle. Aphrodite promised him the love of the most beautiful woman alive. Paris chose Aphrodite. And with that choice, destiny was sealed. For the woman Aphrodite offered was Helen, queen of Sparta, already wed to King Menelaus. Paris took her to Troy, and the Greek armies followed, igniting a war that would last 10 years and echo across eternity. All for love, or perhaps for vanity. Orpheus and Eurydice, love and loss. Not all love in Greek myth was cruel, some was tragic. Orpheus, son of Apollo, was the greatest musician of all. His lyre could charm beasts, bend rivers, even soften the hearts of gods. He loved Eurydice, a mortal woman, with all his soul. But on their wedding day, she was bitten by a serpent and died. Broken, Orpheus descended into the underworld, his music so sorrowful it moved even Hades. The god of death agreed to release Eurydice on one condition: Orpheus must not look back until they reached the world of the living. He led her through the shadows, his heart pounding. The light of the surface grew nearer. Doubt gnawed at him. Was she truly behind him? Did Hades trick him? At the last moment, as daylight broke, Orpheus turned, and Eurydice vanished, lost forever. Love can defy even death, but doubt can destroy it in an instant. Pygmalion and Galatea, the dream of perfection. There was once a sculptor, Pygmalion, who found no joy in mortal women. He carved from ivory the figure of his perfect bride, so flawless, so lifelike, that he fell in love with his own creation. Day after day, he prayed to Aphrodite, begging that his statue might live. And one night, as he kissed her cold lips, they warmed. Galatea, the ivory maiden, opened her eyes, and love became flesh. Pygmalion's story carried a haunting truth, that humans forever chase perfection, and that sometimes, in our longing, we blur the line between dream and reality. The meaning of divine passion. The Greeks saw love not as gentle, but as fire, wild, uncontrollable, both creative and destructive. Zeus's lust created heroes, but also chaos. Hera's jealousy destroyed lives, but revealed the pain of betrayal. Aphrodite's beauty gave birth to wars. Orpheus showed the fragility of trust. Pygmalion revealed our endless hunger for perfection. To the Greeks, love was not safety. It was danger. It was power, obsession, and the force that could move gods and men alike. But what of death? If love defined life, what awaited mortals when life ended? The Greeks believed the underworld was not a place of fire, but a realm of mystery, balance, and shadow. In the next part of the journey, back in time, we descend with Hades into the depths of the underworld and discover what the Greeks truly believed about death, the afterlife, and the soul. The journey back in time, ancient Greece and the Greek gods, mythology. Part 5, the underworld and afterlife. Every man, no matter how mighty, no matter how beloved by the gods, eventually faced the same truth, death. And when the Greeks spoke of death, they did not imagine fiery pits or angelic heavens. They imagined a realm beneath the earth, a shadowy kingdom ruled by one of the most feared yet misunderstood gods of all, Hades. Hades, the silent ruler. Hades was not evil. He was not the devil, nor a god of cruelty. He was inevitability, the shadow that follows every living thing. He ruled not with thunder like Zeus, nor with storms like Poseidon, but with silence, patience, and unyielding justice. The Greeks feared his name, often calling him simply the Unseen One. Yet in his realm, every soul found its place. Kings and beggars alike, heroes and cowards, all descended to the same shadowed halls. Persephone, the queen of the dead. But Hades did not rule alone. His queen was Persephone, daughter of Demeter, goddess of the harvest. Her story was one of sorrow and cycles. Hades, captivated by her beauty, abducted her and carried her to the underworld. Demeter, stricken with grief, let the earth wither, crops dying, famine spreading across the land. At last, Zeus intervened. A compromise was struck. Persephone would spend part of the year with her mother and part with Hades. Thus, the Greeks explained the seasons. When Persephone returned to Demeter, the earth bloomed with spring and summer. When she descended again, autumn fell, and winter's grip claimed the world. The myth was more than story. It was the Greeks' way of understanding the eternal cycle of life, death, and rebirth, the journey of the dead. But what awaited mortals in Hades' realm? When a soul departed, it was carried by Hermes, the guide of the dead, to the banks of the river Styx. There waited Charon, the ferryman who would not take a soul across unless given a coin. This is why the Greeks buried their dead with obols placed upon their tongues or eyes. The crossing was perilous. The Styx was no ordinary river. It was the boundary between life and death, its waters sacred, binding even the oaths of gods. On the other side, the gates of the underworld loomed, guarded by Cerberus, the monstrous three-headed hound. No soul escaped his watch. Within stretched the vast dominion of the dead, realms of the afterlife. The Greeks did not believe in a simple heaven or hell. The underworld was divided into realms, each reflecting the soul's deeds. The asphodel meadows. Here wandered the ordinary souls, neither great heroes nor great sinners. It was a place of shadows, where existence drifted like a dream. Elysium, a paradise reserved for the virtuous. the heroes, the blessed by the gods. Here, the air was golden, the fields eternal, joy without end. In later myths, the most heroic could even be reborn into Elysium again and again, a reward for greatness. Tartarus, deepest of all, a pit beneath the underworld itself. Here, the wicked and the enemies of the gods were punished with eternal torment. The Titans, chained in agony, Sisyphus, doomed to roll his boulder endlessly uphill, Tantalus, forever thirsty, water retreating from his lips. Each punishment reflected the sin: hubris, betrayal, defiance of divine order. The underworld was not simply death, it was justice, reflection, the mirror of one's life, the mysteries of the soul. The Greeks were haunted by questions. Was the soul immortal? Did it vanish, or live forever in Hades' realm? Philosophers like Plato spoke of the soul's journey, its purification, its cycle of rebirth. The Orphic mysteries, secret cults of ancient Greece, taught that the soul was divine, trapped in the body, seeking escape and return to the eternal. Even in their myths, the Greeks saw the underworld not only as an end, but as a passage, a reminder that life itself was a brief moment in an eternal cycle. Heroes who defied death. But what made the underworld unforgettable were the few who dared to enter it alive. Heracles, in his final labor, descended and dragged Cerberus to the surface, conquering even death's guardian. Orpheus, with his music, softened the heart of Hades himself, nearly saving his love, Eurydice. Odysseus, guided by the witch Circe, crossed into the underworld to seek the wisdom of the dead, learning the fate of his journey. Even Aeneas, in Roman myth, descended to see the souls of future Romans, guided by the Sibyl. To enter Hades was to confront not just death, but the truth of existence. Few returned, but those who did were forever changed, the hidden meaning of death. For the Greeks, the underworld was not horror, it was inevitability. They believed death was not the end, but the continuation of balance. Persephone's cycle revealed that life always returns. The rivers of Hades showed that even gods must respect the power of oaths and fate. The punishments of Tartarus taught that hubris, excessive pride, was the greatest sin of all. In death, the Greeks saw both fear and wisdom. For if life was fleeting, then every choice mattered. Every act echoed into eternity. But myths, like all things, eventually faced their end. Even the mighty Olympians would one day fade, their temples crumbling, their names whispered only in stories. This is Cullen, the journey back in time. And so, we leave ancient Greece, a world where gods walked with men, where heroes fought monsters, where love and rage shaped empires, and where death itself was but another journey. But this is only one chapter in humanity's story. For beyond Greece lies Egypt, with its gods of sun and shadow, its secrets carved into stone. Beyond Egypt waits Rome, where emperors claim the throne of gods themselves. Beyond Rome lies Mesopotamia, cradle of civilization, where the first myths of mankind were written in clay. The gods of Greece may have faded into legend, but what if they were never alone? What if every civilization carried fragments of the same eternal truth, hidden in myth, waiting to be uncovered? On the next journey, back in time, we will descend into another world of mystery and power. So ask yourself, what if the myths were not myths at all? What if they were memories? If you felt the fire of Olympus today, don't let it end here. Subscribe to the journey back in time. Like and share this video if the gods still live in your imagination. And tell us in the comments, which Greek god or hero do you feel lives within you? This is not the end. This is only the beginning. Because history is not behind us. It is waiting for us to return. Check out the next video coming up. We dive even deeper into the ancient past. Welcome to the journey back in time.